Hey guys, how are we doing? Crypto Insight UK here, bringing you back another video. So, a lot has happened again in the last 24 hours. This was the start of yesterday. The stock market yesterday was at a 3 in terms of fear and greed index, extreme fear. In fact, the lowest extreme fear or fear and greed index that I'd probably ever seen. And this actually led me to be a bit degen, and I just longed. Actually, I longed XRP, just off the back of that, off the back of the 3 on extreme fear. I was like, I was looking around, and I was thinking, oh, maybe we could short down to the lows. I'm gonna get into this discussion in a minute as to what I think could happen next. Maybe we could come down to the lows, and then when I saw this, how fearful the market was, I was like, look, when you get an emotional risk to reward this outweighed on one side of the trade, like it's time to probably take a position. So I actually took a long position. I'm going to share the long position with you if you want proof if you want proof of it. Um, that's no problem. I then closed that long position after we had the spike. I didn't know the spike was coming, and the reason I didn't share it on socials that I took the position was because I didn't know if I was being like impetuous or degen-y or what, but I just saw the outsized risk reward in terms of emotion. And then what we saw coming a little bit later on was Trump basically pausing tariffs on all countries that weren't China, but then rising tariffs on China, and then finally Trump saying he was going to meet Xi Jinping to try and make a deal. And that's what we've been looking for risk on green light, essentially, if we get that deal from Trump and China. And it's going to take a while to work out. Like, I can't imagine the deal they're going to make is going to be very straightforward, because they've basically got to come to some sort of conclusion with China to say, look, okay, I will devalue the dollar against your yuan, so then you can print within China and stimulate your economy because of your debt deflation that's going on at the minute, where essentially you're just going bankrupt in slow motion, trying to print your way out of it, which you currently can't do because you're going to let the yuan run off in terms of strength, and that's going to push your economy essentially into hyperinflation and oblivion. It is basically where it's going to push their economy to if there's not a deal worked out, as long as the monetary system stays the way it is. Obviously, we had this spike out in the yuan against the dollar against the yuan, and then that's since come back down. And I presume they will bring the dollar down against the yuan in some way, shape, or form, so as I said, so China can print. How, if, and when that happens, I really don't know. And so it could take up to let's say 90 days. I think, because that's how long they've had these tariffs paused for. So I'd give that as a window for them to make this deal. I presume it'll be faster than that, because the faster China can get it done, the better. And just looking at like forward-looking and indicators for the markets in general, obviously we think this is going to be a net positive for the market. Looking at the DXY and the inverse correlation that we've been talking about to Bitcoin, I'm going to add the Bitcoin overlay on here. What we can see is the 11-week lag. The bottoms pretty much came in exactly as we said it. In fact, we called for the 7th of April in the newsletter. So if that is the bottom in terms of crypto, so from the day that the DXY started to break down, that inverse correlation coming into Bitcoin, we've been covering this for weeks on YouTube and also for weeks in the newsletter. That could have been the bottom. And if that is the bottom, then we've obviously nailed it. But what I'm basically showing you here is that weakness here in the DXY should come as strength into Bitcoin soon. And I know it looks like it's been tracking, but it hasn't. If we take it on the weekly, it often moves inversely correlated. Look, as the DXY goes up, as the DXY goes up, Bitcoin comes down, and then as the DXY comes down, Bitcoin starts to rise. And the DXY has been rising, and yes, Bitcoin has too, but now the DXY has come down. So in my opinion, Bitcoin's going to go up very soon. And that's what we've been drawing away from that. And so what I'm saying here is this deal could be done within a few weeks, and that could have been the bottom, because what we're seeing from other indicators is that bottom is in or close, based on other metrics. So that's why I'm saying that this deal is probably closer than we think, because of that sort of thing. Like if you've got some indicators saying, look, the market looks like it's going to turn around soon, whether it's 90 days away or not, what would that take us into? What would that be? May, June, July? It could come by July, but by then you're going to have seen things pricing things in like forward looking anyway. So what I'm basically saying is we have other indicators saying this deal is not going to take as long as people think. However, I personally think it's got to have to take some time to be worked through. And I would presume they've been in discussion anyway, and it's only publicly that they're saying that they're now in discussion. They're probably closer to a deal than people expect and think, and everything that's been on display has just been public posturing. So with that being said, where do I think the market's going in the short term? Let's just show you the Bitcoin and XRP chart. We talked that I said that I had an XRP trade on from this leverage zone. It wasn't a perfect entry or anything. I literally impulsively entered yesterday, and I would never recommend people to do that. 182, and then I closed up here at like $2. Had quite a high leverage on that trade, and I closed because of the speed of the spike, but also the area that we've like ran into this DCA zone that I've been showing you on the 3-day is an area we haven't spent a lot of time, but an area that we've respected quite heavily, and look, it seems to be acting as resistance now. So that leads me on to where I think the market may or may not be going in the short term. If we look at Bitcoin, we're in that similar position where we've got back into this area of like where a lot of candle closes have been found. So like this area here has been a key level of resistance really, because what you can see is tons of opens and closes within this area. So it's obviously a key level of support and now resistance as we're below it. And then on the other side of that, I also said that we could come and sweep these lows before heading up, being as the previous swing high from March 2024 was at about 73,800, and we're currently, the low was at 74,500. So if we take a look at liquidity, you can see that liquidity has been building up below the lows that we've got at the minute. However, there's substantial liquidity above us. I'm hands off on the market right now. In fact, I'm hands off generally. We bought spot. You guys know we bought ENA. I got out of my CRV and didn't get the entry I wanted into that yet. So this is why I'm saying I'm hands off. I've got my bids in for CRV at like 42 something. In fact, I'll show you the level that I've got my bids in for CRV, because I'm just transparent with you guys on this channel and don't charge you for this sort of info like a lot of people do. I don't see why I would do that, because all the people that are charging you obviously aren't making enough money from trading to basically pay for their lifestyle. Otherwise, why would they charge you for their information? That's my personal thoughts on it. My bids are somewhere around here. Maybe the hourlies where it's here. My bids are here. 43 cent flat realistically. Just below these candle closes here. Could come lower than that, but I think that's sweep this low here, and then continue to head upwards. But that's why there are only bids. There's bids on spot. We bid ENA at 30 cent. We're at about 30 cent again now. We bought here. We obviously came down. We've been in this dollar cost average area that we've been talking about, and I wrote about it in the newsletter. Good area is dollar cost average. We're still in that area. In my opinion, it's a good area anyway. But as I've just shown you on the liquidity, I personally don't know whether we go up or down from here. There's liquidity below us, and I think it's logical that you could come down, close that gap, flush us out. Maybe there's a narrative that they're not talking about a deal and some other stuff comes out, or some financial player goes bankrupt and then the Fed had to step in, or whatever. I don't know what the narrative's going to be that could sweep us down there, but very possibly or equally, M2's picking up. The DXY, as I've shown you, is showing that Bitcoin should have bottomed in and around here. So very feasibly on the other side of the argument, we could start our march up towards the upside and the significant liquidity that's above us as well. Obviously, there's more above us than there's below. That's why we've been bidding on spot at these prices. I was trying to catch some swing trades. I caught one yesterday on XRP. Didn't talk about it, as I said, because it was more of like an impulsive, impetuous decision that I don't like to promote. Like, I don't like to talk about those things because I don't think it's the way that people should trade. In that respect, it was an outsized risk to reward on emotional sentiment. And look, realistically, the markets are fucking crazy. Like, the S&P was up 10% yesterday. Like, what the fuck is this candle? Look through history. When have you seen a candle like this? This shows me that something is crazy in the market right now. Look at the state of that candle yesterday, genuinely. So do we then retrace down here and then build a more healthy or double bottom a nice solid reversal structure? Or is this enough? There's a lot of volume that's come in the last few days. We're flushing people out of positions. I think Trump's reshoring the US for the larger macro. Like, he's aware that about things such as the fourth turning and Ray Dalio's changing world order, where he's got to reshore and bring value back to the country that is slowly bleeding out. The West is bleeding out slowly. You know, this is my opinion. So if he knows all these things, what he's doing now is for the long-term potential. He's trying to build for the long-term potential gain of the US. Whether he does it or doesn't do it, whether he's right or he's wrong, I don't know. But that I can see that's what I think he's trying to do at the expense of pretty much the economy. If that's what it costs, I don't think he'll crash the economy either, because of what I've said multiple times about the people he's got in his cabinet. I don't think he'll crash the economy because they seem pretty switched on about it. Scott Bessent, supposedly one of the smartest people in the room, in his area, and Treasury Secretary Howard Lutnick, Elon Musk. Whether you like these people or not, they're not stupid. So they've got a plan. And Trump's major plan for me, as he says, is to make America great again. And I did a tweet this morning sharing Darius Dale's thoughts on the recent Forward Guidance podcast, where he talks about the median American becoming wealthier again, not just the means, because the mean is obviously the average, meaning that that would aggregate the amount of funds, but it isn't truly reflective, because the top 10% of people in America hold like 90% of the wealth. What he's talking about is a median American becoming more wealthy. So everyone basically who's below those top 10% of wealthy people, essentially increasing their net worth, and how Trump is trying to do that by reshoring, creating jobs, etc. And I think he's going to do that with crypto as well, and that's what I said. He references the USA, and I basically compared it to crypto. I've said from the start that it's net positive for Trump to try and raise crypto up. 50 million Americans hold crypto, and from my view, many of those aren't particularly wealthy. Some are also younger. Trump would, in effect, buy 50 million voters, creating wealth for a generation that's less wealthy. What we're trying to do is distribute the wealth from the boomer generation, who aren't moving that wealth around. It's in pension funds and locked in equities, equities, and also locked in property. So it's there on paper, but it isn't doing anything. And the generations below are less wealthy in relation to those other demographics. So what we need to see is a transition of wealth from the older demographic to the younger, and crypto, and what Trump's trying to do, I think, with the US is part of that shift in capital. So that's basically where I stand on the macro or the long term, and also where I stand on crypto in the short term. I'm not in a trade at the minute in anything. I have some bids in still, as I said, for CRV. I will bid leverage on crypto on XRP again if we enter my leverage zone. That's why I leveraged in here. And I will bid spot if we enter golden opportunity. I've bid CRV below this range. I'll take it on the 4 hour just to show you what I'm looking at. The range was created here off this high, then to this low. We could bring the range out to here. You could say that this is the range, which is still equally valid, or you could now actually extend it to this area. But I actually bid as this being the low of the range, but I guess that's a structural break. So you could say that now that is probably the range. But anyway, I've bid here about 43-ish cent, and I will leave those bids in there. If they get filled, then great. If they don't, then fine, because we've obviously got our bags full with XRP and obviously ENA recently. I bought quite a lot of ENA, which acts similarly to CRV in a way that it's like a beta play on Ethereum. I'm still thinking about buying another Bored Ape. I haven't yet bought one. I haven't actually checked the floor for the last few days, but just waiting to see what happens now in the next few days with Trump and China and the narrative around equities and this sort of stuff as well. and then we'll go from there. So I hope this has been a bit of an informative video. I've just sort of chatted to you a little bit in this one rather than break too much down for you. But yeah, I hope it helps. If it does, please drop that subscribe button, hit a like, and let me know what you're doing in the comments section below. Peace up, A-Town down, as Crypto Insight UK would say.